Welcome to REGIP, the Regional Integration Platform. In today's program, we focus on the death of the President of Burundi, Pierre Nkurunziza. And the topic today is the Nkurunziza debacle, the East African community, and COVID-19. And today we ask the question, will the death of former Burundian President Nkurunziza catalyze a collective approach against COVID-19 in the East African community? In the past programs, we have looked at the challenges that the East African community as a regional economic community has had in terms of having a collective approach towards COVID-19. In the last discussion we had, we talked about the virtual meeting of heads of state and government, which was attended by a number of heads of state, but the president of Burundi, Nkurunziza, did not attend that meeting. At the same time, the president of Tanzania, Magufuli, also did not attend that meeting. But today we want to look at Burundi and President Nkurunziza, and we will show you how relevant this question is. Let's review a bit of the history here. Nkurunziza was president of Burundi for 15 years, since the end of the civil war in the year 2005. 12 years of fighting, and it ended in 2005 with an agreement, and the people of Burundi were able to give themselves a new constitution. That civil war claimed almost 300,000 lives. The Burundians again voted to have a new constitution with the emphasis on power sharing between the Hutus and the Tutsis, and also reserving some seats in the National Assembly, in the Senate, and even in the bureaucracy for the minority ethnic group, the Twa. Now, the conflict in Burundi did not end there. In 2015, as the country was preparing to go for elections, violence started again. This time the violence was caused by the fact that Pierre Nkurunziza wanted to go for a third term, what other people saw as unconstitutional and illegitimate. But Nkurunziza and his colleagues argued that, in fact, the first term of his presidency was not elected by the electorate, and so he deserved to have another term as per the constitution. And so this is how in 2015 Burundi then erupted once again into violence. Now let's see then what happened. Within that context of violence, we find that civil liberties, the rights of ordinary citizens, suffered a lot. Many civic groups, NGOs, and so on were banned and therefore were not able to operate. Quite a good number of civic actors had to go to exile because their rights had been suspended, and the violence continued for a number of years. Now, coming back to the events just before the death of Pierre Nkurunziza, where the link with COVID-19 becomes very important. When we reviewed the issue of the virtual meeting between the heads of state in the last program, we did not mention that President Pierre Nkurunziza and President John Pombe Magufuli did not attend the virtual meeting of 12th of May 2020. And this, for us, then undermined any attempt to have a collective approach towards control of COVID-19. Now, we told you that in that meeting, the virtual meeting of heads of state, what happened is that they were able to promulgate the guidelines that had been formulated by the Sectoral Council on Health and EAC affairs. So that is how significant that meeting was in terms of a collective fight against COVID-19. Now, let's see what also happened at that point in time. We had a series of events. For example, the Burundi Foreign Ministry basically expelled the WHO official who was in charge of the coronavirus response on the 14th of May. Now, elections in Burundi happened on the 20th of May in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. And the elections were held and there were massive campaign rallies across the country. And many people were not really protecting themselves. The government did not have a policy on prevention of COVID-19, save for the fact that, there were travel restrictions, particularly from outside the country. But within the country, it was really, things were just going on as usual. Now, on or around the 28th of May, we see that the president's wife, Denise Nkurunziza, was airlifted to Nairobi to be treated for COVID-19. And unconfirmed reports say that, and these claims continue to come up in social media and so on and so forth, that some other members of the family might also have been infected. Now, the president's death raises the critical question whether or not Burundian leaders will change the country's policy on COVID-19. If they were to do so, the East African Community guidelines offer a very important entry point for them. They do not have to reinvent the wheel, and that will also make it possible for the region to then start moving as one, because Burundi is one of the countries that never really implemented a lot of what the Sectoral Council had proposed. And so as we conclude today's session, we would still go back to the question, will the death of President Nkurunziza catalyze a collective approach against COVID-19 in the East African community?